This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. This is like the Groundhog Day of political trials, and we just saw our shadow. Here's what we got for y'all. The second impeachment of Donald Trump and the first ever impeachment trial against a former president began today. We'll hit the highlights of early arguments and get the 411 from one of our reporters on Capitol Hill to hear what's in store for the rest of the week. Then, do you ever feel numb to the record-breaking COVID cases reported? You aren't alone. We explain why more numbers can mean less compassion in a pandemic. But first, here's what you need to know right now.
Impeachment is not merely about removing someone from office. Fundamentally, impeachment exists to protect our constitutional system, to keep each of us safe, to uphold our freedom, to safeguard our democracy.
We are really here because the majority in the House of Representatives does not want to face Donald Trump as a political rival in the future. That's the real reason we're here.
After hours of debate, the Senate found the impeachment trial against former President Donald Trump is, in fact, constitutional. That was the first question that needed to be answered as his trial got underway Tuesday.
This cannot be the future of America. We cannot have presidents inciting and mobilizing mob violence against our government and our institutions because they refuse to accept the will of the people under the Constitution of the United States.
On Wednesday, evidence from both sides will be presented to answer the other big question: did Trump incite an insurrection on January 6th? That is the single article he's facing. Democrats say they will have new evidence to present beyond what's already public. The fact that the former president rallied hundreds of supporters who then stormed the Capitol, leading to 5 deaths and dozens of injuries. Meanwhile, Trump's attorneys are expected to argue his actions on January 6th were protected under the First Amendment. We're going to circle back on impeachment, but first, here's what else is happening. It's been more than a year since COVID-19 infections were first reported, but we still don't know where exactly it came from. Of course, the internet has gone down some pretty dark rabbit holes with unconfirmed theories, but today the World Health Organization put one of those theories to rest. The WHO scientists tracing the origin of the pandemic say it's extremely unlikely that COVID-19 was a result of a lab accident. While lab accidents have created viral or biological threats before, that kind of thing is generally more Hollywood than reality. The scientists tracing COVID's roots don't believe that was its origin.
In terms of arguments against, look at the fact that nowhere previously was this particular virus researched or identified or known.
Experts still believe COVID-19 first originated in animals, then spread to humans. As for which animal, that's still being investigated, so don't go pitting it on bats or pangolins just yet.
Mainstream media does not spotlight our stories enough. We matter, and racism is killing us.
This week, the district attorney for Alameda County in California announced the creation of a special unit to counter crimes against Asians and Asian Americans, particularly the elderly. It comes after several recent unprovoked attacks in the Bay Area, like the one we're about to show you, which may be tough to watch. Surveillance video caught a man shoving a 91-year-old in Oakland's Chinatown. The attack quickly went viral after actor Daniel Day Kim offered a $25,000 reward for more information. There's no public federal data on anti-Asian hate crimes and incidents, but Stop AAPI Hate reported more than 2,800 incidents just in 2020 alone. Many Asian American leaders blame the Trump administration for encouraging that violence, as the president went out of his way to link the virus with China and Asia.
What we saw in the prior administration was that words matter. The use of words such as Chinese virus, Wuhan flu, not to mention worse connotations of that, clearly had an effect on our Asian American community. It caused people to be singled out for hate. There were racial epithets thrown.
So far, President Biden has tried to address the issue of anti-Asian hate with public statements and an executive memo. All right, so coming back to impeachment, we wanted to understand a bit more about what we're going to be hearing later on this week. So we dialed up one of our colleagues. Nate Reed is on the horn. Nate, I wanted to know, What sort of arguments are we going to be hearing from both sides going into the week?
On the side of President Trump's lawyers, you're going to hear arguments that the president was within his First Amendment rights, that he was able to say the things he did because it was freedom of speech. They're also saying that the president cannot be prosecuted for making those statements because he is no longer the president of the United States. Now, on the Democrat side, they're saying that's not the case. They can certainly prosecute President Trump because he was impeached while he was still in power, and additionally, they have formally impeached officials who have stepped down or whose terms have expired. Democrats are also going to argue that President Trump did directly incite the insurrection. They're going to show legal briefs from various members of the riots, people who stormed the Capitol, saying that the president directly told them to do that.
We fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
What will it take to either convict or acquit the former president?
I would say it's pretty unlikely that President Trump is going to be convicted. The reason being, there would need to be a supermajority. That means 67 senators would need to vote to convict President Trump. That means 17 Republican senators would need to break ranks with their party and vote to convict President Trump, along with all 50 Democrats. Now, so far, 5 or 6 Republican senators have seemed open or willing to voting to convict President Trump, but it would require a lot more than that to actually have a conviction hold up. And so why that conviction would matter, although it would not remove him from office because his term has already expired, it would potentially bar him from seeking future office.
What will the former president be doing after his inevitable acquittal?
He could run for president again in 2024 if he chooses to. Really, there would be almost no repercussion for him directly from this impeachment trial, but at the same time, some members of Congress, especially Democrats, have left the door open to a censure vote, to formally censuring or criticizing the fact that he held this rally outside the White House, which led to the Capitol riots. There also is talk about potentially invoking the 14th Amendment, which prohibits certain office holders from seeking office again. Whether or not Republicans decide to join with Democrats and pursue those options if an impeachment trial fails, that's what we still do not know.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. I appreciate you. Former President Trump claimed that his administration had done a lot for the Black community, and many within the GOP encouraged Black Americans to move from left to right. So, what happened? Remember Blexit? Not Brexit, but Blexit. And not the Blexit encouraging Black financial independence, but the Blexit that encouraged a mass exodus of Black people from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. Some on the right thought Black support would shift laterally during President Trump's term. Newsy's Amber Strong takes a look at what the numbers tell us about Republican efforts to gain Black support in 2020.
That is the loudest I've ever heard anything in this room. You just broke the record.
It seemed like the enthusiasm was there. This was supposed to be the moment African Americans jettisoned the Democratic Party. But did it happen? Did Blacks really exit the Democratic Party? And should Democrats be concerned about retaining some African American voters? It depends on who you ask and how you look at it.
Did the so-called Blexit happen?
No, absolutely not. Strongest base support for Biden and Harris was African Americans, African American women, African American men.
No. There's a bunch of caveats in this, but the answer is no.
Those caveats, gains among Black males and small inroads from 2016.
We have a set of communities called the African American South, which are largely rural. Trump did marginally better. He did 0.4 points better than he did in 2016 in those places in terms of margin. So what does that mean? Does that mean he did better with the Black vote? No, because they're communities. So there are white people who live in those communities too.
He received almost 19% of the Black male vote. He received 8% of Black women, which is abysmal, but it's still twice as many as any other, I think twice as many as Romney.
However, many pollsters say you shouldn't read too much into 2020 exit polling numbers either way, because face it, it was a really weird year. So let's look at it another way. More than 60 African Americans ran for Congress under the GOP banner last year, a record high according to the RNC. But when it comes to victories, the number of Black Republicans entering Congress in 2021 is unchanged from early 2018.
I fought a good race, I would say that. I had the best team imaginable.
Splintered author and National Federation of Republican Women Chair Vivian Childs lost her bid for Congress. According to the Center for American Women in Politics, she wasn't alone. 33 Black or mixed-race Republican women ran for Congress in 2020. None of them won. Childs says changing that starts with greater support from the party.
Just because you look like me doesn't mean I'm going to vote for you. I want the best candidate. But when you have that candidate, then support them. Don't tell me you want to see diversity and you don't do anything about it.
Only one Black GOP woman has ever won Congress, Mia Love, and she lost her re-election after a bout with President Trump.
Mia Love gave me no love, and she lost. Too bad. Sorry about that, Mia.
The former president seemed to be a fixture in Black GOP momentum, with Black conservatives capturing the spotlight and defectors castigated. But where does the Black GOP movement go from here? With Trump gone, no net gains in Congress, and a party fractured by the Capitol riots. A letter obtained by Newsy in the wake of the events at the Capitol and endorsed by prominent Black Republicans calls on the party to, quote, examine itself after losing the White House and Congress.
His kind of in-your-face attitude attracted a lot of people, both Black and white, to the party. And that's a good thing. I think where we stand right now is that his rhetoric and what's happened over the last, days in the Capitol will also be a reckoning.
Amber Strong, Newsy, Washington.
There's a lot to keep up with when it comes to the pandemic. Variants, new cases and hospitalizations going up, going down, deaths. The information is informative and helps us govern ourselves during this pandemic, but is the frequency making us a bit numb to the news? Have we reached a different kind of pandemic fatigue? Newsy's Lindsay Thies takes a closer look at how COVID has impacted our compassion.
How important is compassion in the fight against COVID-19?
Compassion is the motivator for behavior. That's what drives us.
We spoke with a compassion researcher and expert.
My name's Paul Slovic. I'm a professor of psychology at the University of Oregon, and I'm also president of a small research institute called Decision Research, which studies decision making.
And he says when it comes to math, our own minds deceive us. Slovic has found humans react most strongly to seeing just one person in distress. Not only that, as the number of people impacted goes up, the brain responds with less empathy and action. He calls it the flawed arithmetic of compassion.
So what's the problem here? The problem is that our when we rely on our feelings, when we trust our feelings as a guide to how important something is, our feelings can't count.
Slovic says we can only hold on to so many numbers in short-term memory before we have to write them down. So when something like cases trend downward, we can't identify them beyond going up or down. This brain math doesn't just pertain to pandemics. For example, studies showed short-lived immediate outpourings into Syria's civil war crisis in 2015 after a photo of a drowned 3-year-old refugee went viral. Donations to a Red Cross campaign for Syrian refugees were 55 times greater the week the picture published. In the weeks following, it dramatically dropped off.
The human brain is lazy, and if we think we can do the job the easier way with our gut feelings, we go that way.
There are some ways experts say you can hack your brain to work out that compassion muscle more. For COVID-19, it could be focusing on one person or case story, listening to health experts, or even taking up something like meditation or mindfulness.
Mindfulness practice, people hear this word, it sounds kind of nebulous, but it's really quite simple, and it's just a means of slowing down our thoughts from going all over the place to something singular, like just following our breathing.
For Newsy, I'm Lindsay Thies.
Healthcare workers are having to overcome more than just distribution logistics to get some of the most vulnerable Americans vaccinated. The CDC says people 65 years old and up account for 8 in every 10 deaths because of COVID-19. Now, there is an increased effort to help seniors get vaccinated. National reporter Kai Beach has more.
If other people are sick, I don't want to be on no damn ventilator.
While it can be a struggle getting some seniors vaccinated,
Not really important.
for organizers like Ted Pasco,
Do you guys get your mail here?
it's tough just to get a hold of them.
For many different reasons, they're reluctant to get vaccines. They also don't necessarily trust the healthcare system or the government in general.
Pasco is with the Senior Support Center, a day shelter for hungry and homeless seniors in Colorado. This shelter serves 3 meals a day, provides individualized case management services.
She's in line, you said?
Those services have changed since the start of the pandemic. It's all done now with new safety restrictions.
Oh, sorry, one moment.
Also, the shelter now holds a vaccine clinic for seniors ages 70 and older.
VA won't give it to me and support to me. I don't know.
Some who are frustrated or unable to make an appointment.
Nah, just they give me that kicked up flu shot. It's a little sore.
With the CDC reporting adults ages 65 and older are accounting for 80% of the deaths attributed to COVID-19,
Get your first dose?
first responders say these vaccinations will benefit this older generation.
I feel good right now.
You feel even better after we're done here.
Yes.
Save your life for a few more years, right?
Yep.
As of the last week in January, the American Association of Retired People reported vaccines are available to older adults in all but 6 states. To help more seniors get their necessary shots, the AARP is offering a series of vaccination guides, one for each state.
Alrighty.
Despite the increased attention to getting older Americans vaccinated, some still aren't buying it.
I had a lot of 70 guys tell me come get the shot. They said they don't need it.
But for those who believe in science,
A little poke here.
they say it can help save seniors, one shot at a time.
But I think everybody needs it. But if everybody don't take it, the world's never gonna get right again.
I'm Kai Beach reporting.
At the beginning of the month, 1 million doses of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine were delivered to South Africa. A week later, the distribution was paused because of new research that said the vaccine only provided minimal protection against a new COVID variant that's widespread in the country. Newsy reports from Johannesburg, where activists and citizens are asking the U.S. to help address the country's struggles to vaccinate its population.
Vaccines, vaccines, vaccines. That's what Archbishop of Cape Town, Thabo Makgoba, is preaching today. The South African cleric and activists have called on U.S. health officials to press Moderna to release the patent for its vaccination to the Southern Hemisphere. Operation Warp Speed funded development of Moderna's vaccine.
A lot of taxpayers' money, as I tabulate in my letter, has been used to co-fund, co-develop the vaccine through Moderna.
Rehad Desai, an activist critical of government's slow response, says that a COVID-free world is not possible without collaboration between all stakeholders and countries.
There's a massive gap at the moment, and unless we actually begin to close that gap, we're going to see more and more mutations coming, and that will make the vaccines that are available and are being rolled out redundant.
Last week, South Africa received its first batch of 1 million AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines to be rolled out this month. However, government scientists have found this vaccine to be less effective on the current South African strain and have put the distribution of the vaccine on hold. These hiccups are nothing new, according to disability justice activist Gabby Sanchez.
So what we're seeing in other places, in other countries, is a very, very developed plan, a strategy that is fleshed out, that is systematic, that is seems very strategical in its logistics. What we're not seeing and not hearing from South African government is exactly that.
The country's health minister has stated that 20 million additional vaccines have been ordered from Pfizer, but dates or a concrete rollout plan have not been announced. Park Care is a frail care home with more than 250 residents. The doctors and nurses at this facility will probably be first in line for vaccination, but this falls short according to supporting staff who are often overlooked as essentials.
If you've got a COVID infection in a ward,
It's not the nurses, it's not the doctors and stuff that come and clean up. It's your cleaning staff that come in full PPE to do the cleaning and repairing of that area.
South Africa's second wave of the virus is on the decline, but experts are predicting a third wave to begin in June. But for the staff and residents of Parkcare, no one is safe until everyone is vaccinated. Zahir Kasim, Newsy, Johannesburg.
If you haven't done so already, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter using the hashtag #NewsyInTheLoop. Hit me up there because I wouldn't trust y'all with a voicemail box. The political climate has been a little choppy, yeah? So much so that Bruce Springsteen, a pretty popular musician, appealed for us to find common ground, and folks basically tomatoed him virtually. Things have been stressful, to say the least. National reporter Stephanie Stone spoke to an expert about the stress some of us have felt and how to deal with it.
It used to be polite to refrain from discussing religion or politics. Now that's all anyone talks about, and if there is one thing to agree on, it's that it's gotten ugly out there.
We've seen that sort of debate devolve into basically a schoolyard food fight that is, amplified by a million.
That's Jason Malika. He's a professional lecturer at American University. The topic of animosity has come up with his students a lot.
There is still that feeling of there's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of noise out there that has just obviously since the election, and then as we crept into January, this whole other side of things where we had an attack in the Capitol and almost an insurrection.
His students, he says, were and still are concerned about their future as we all watch what's happening in government.
If we can't work together in Washington, how are we expected to move forward as a country out of a pandemic, and let alone get kids back into school, get jobs, flowing again? It leads people to be very stressed out because of all of this negative energy.
What is this current state of our country and the politics doing to people, and how is it affecting them mentally?
If you watch a lot of traumatic things, and a lot of times media have scared people crazy, I think. And keep in mind, a lot of the social media that has been very aggressive has been manufactured locally and abroad for different nefarious purposes.
Dr. Eugene Lipov is a PTSD, or what he calls PTSI, post-traumatic stress injury expert. He says stress has reached serious levels for some people.
If you don't take care of your brain, you're going to have a problem.
Dr. Lipov, who immigrated here from the Ukraine, admits he too has been bothered by the state of affairs in our country.
I have lived in places where there was absolute chaos, and that's a problem. There's no food, it's cold, there's no transportation. It's very difficult. I think the United States is an amazing country, and I'm very proud to be a citizen, but it's really a shame to see it being taken apart by, at least to me, relatively trivial differences.
His career is focused on mental health. He worries about future problems, not from viruses, but what he calls mental pandemics. For now, he recommends limiting social media to 30 minutes a day, focusing on exercising and meditating.
Meditation is very important. What it does, it brings the brain tissue back. It's the only thing that does. The more, I think everybody, no matter what political party they'd like to be in, wants more brain tissue. They want to be able to think clearer and remember things better and sleep well. So if you do that, you're going to be ahead of the game.
Dr. Lipov says there is hope on the horizon with our scientific advancements, and he hopes students like Jason Malika's will see a bright future rather than a bleak one. I'm Stephanie Stone, reporting.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow for more in the Loop. Same time, same place. Top stories from Newsy are headed your way right now.